Hey, welcome back to Mr. PL's Precal. This is Unit 4, Topic 3, Lesson number 7. And in this video, we're going to be talking about multiplying and dividing complex numbers in trigonometric form, or polar form. First, we're going to start off with a warm-up, which is actually not really just a review. It's actually something I didn't cover in the last video, but is actually very, very easy. Changing this trigonometric form into rectangular form, which is the opposite of what I did in the last video. Well, all you really got to do is you just multiply it, because this is really just distributive property, 6 times cosine. So I'm going to write this 6 times cosine of pi over 3 plus 6 times I sine of pi over 3. Now, I don't normally write this, but I usually would just, do multiple steps at the same time, because cosine of pi over 3 is actually something you should have memorized. Cosine of pi over 3, remember pi over 3 is 60 degrees, and cosine of 60 degrees is 1/2. So this is really 6 times 1/2 being added to 6 times I times sine of pi over 3. Now, sine of pi over 3, that would be sine of 60 degrees. Sine of 60 degrees is square root of 3 over 2, like this. Okay, now this side is going to be very, very easy. 6 times 1/2 is really just 3. Plus, I'm going to put the I first, because you remember multiplication really doesn't matter what order you put it in. Normally, people will put I because it's not in the square root first. I'm going to multiply it now. I've already used that. I already put that down here. This is really 6 over 1, so when I multiply, I can reduce diagonally, so this 2 becomes a 1, and this 6 becomes a 3. I'm really just dividing 6 by 2, to be honest. So therefore, it's 3 times the square root of 3. And there you go. You've got it in rectangular form. So really, it's just a matter of distributing and simplifying. And a lot of things I just did, you can do multiple steps at the same time. I know a lot of you like to do shortcuts, but I just want to go step by step so I can explain it better. Okay, so a lot of what I just did on the warm-up is very much like what we're going to be doing during this lesson, which I'm going to do just 2 examples of each. It's really just a matter of using these formulas that I'm providing to you right here. It's pretty straightforward. So if z of 1 is one of the trigonometric equations and z of 2 is the other trig equation, then all you have to do is follow this format to the equation. So this is the radius of the first, radius of the second, cosine of the first angle, cosine of the second angle, and so forth. Okay, so all I got to do is basically follow this format for multiplication. So if I want to multiply this trigonometric equation times this trigonometric equation, I use this, which is the 2 radiuses multiplied by each other. So that's 2 times 6. Once again, I'm going to show every step, but I know a lot of you will probably just skip steps because you like to do it the shortcut way. When I say skip steps, I don't mean not do them. I mean do multiple steps at the same time. So cosine of the first angle plus the second angle. So that's cosine of 5 pi over 4 plus pi over 2. And then it's going to be added to I times sine of the exact same 2 angles, like this. And all you got to do now is simplify it, basically. Well, 2 times 6 is 12, so I'll change that first. Let me add these 2 together. So I'm going to rewrite this, and I know this is where a lot of you will skip steps. I'm going to change pi over 2 to the 2. I'm going to change it to the same denominator, 4. But if I do that, I have to multiply the top by 2 as well. If you multiply the bottom by 2, you got to multiply the top by 2. 2/4 is the same as 1/2. Now I can add them. 5 pi plus 2 more pi makes 7 pi over 4. And add that to I times sine of 7 pi over 4. Okay, so now going back to our trigonometric stuff that we remember, 7 pi over 4 is really a 45-degree reference angle in the 4th quadrant. And remember, all students take calculus, so only cosine is positive in the 4th quadrant. 7 pi over 4 is 1 less than 8 pi over 4, which will be all the way around the circle. Okay, well, cosine of pi over 4, which is 45 degrees, is square root of 2 over 2. So this is really just square root of 2 over 2. So 12 times square root of 2 over 2, and it's positive because cosine is positive in the 4th quadrant, plus I times, oops, let me not write sign there. Let me erase that, and there we go. Because I don't need to write sign. Sine of pi of 7 pi over 4 is negative square root of 2 over 2. Now, the reason why it's negative is because sine is not positive in the 4th quadrant. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is multiply both of these by 12. Now, once again, this is an unnecessary step, but I'm really doing 12 times square root of 2 over 2 plus I times 12 times negative square root of 2 over 2. So really, I'm just distributing the 12 to both terms. Now, I like to write it 12 twice just to see that what I'm really doing is I'm going to be canceling. So this becomes a 1, this becomes a 6. 12 over 1, reduced diagonally. So this becomes 6 times square root of 2 plus I times, this does the exact same thing. 6 times negative square root of 2 is negative square root of 6. Okay, so I got negative 6 times the square root of 2. Now, I don't really like the way that's written. I'm going to move this negative out in front over here. So the preferred method of writing this answer is 6 times the square root of 2 minus I times 6 times the square root of 2. That's probably the preferred method. Although you really could switch these two around. You could say 6I times the square root of 2, and that would be the exact same thing as this. So either one of these is preferred. And there's your answer in rectangular form. Okay, let me do one more example of those, and then I'll go to quotient, which really is doing the exact same process, only using the other formula. Okay, so it's 5 times 2 times cosine of 11 pi over 6 plus 2 pi over 3. And then it's going to be plus I times sine of the exact same two angles, 11 pi over 6 plus 2 pi over 3. Okay, so I'm going to skip a few steps on this one. So 5 times 2 is 10. And then if I add these, I make this a 6. I got to make this a 4. I got to double it. 4, 6, and 2/3 are the same thing. 11 pi plus 4 more pi's makes 15 pi over 6. So this is cosine of 15 pi over 6. And plus I times sine of 15 pi over 6. Okay. I'll just double check to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. Yeah, 15 pi over 6. Okay, so that's actually the same thing, coterminal. So remember, 12 pi over 6 would be a full circle. This is really 3 pi more than going all the way around the full circle. So this is really the same thing as 3 pi over 6. 3 pi over 6 is really just pi over 2. So cosine of pi over 2. Let me just pause and double check and make it. All right, don't say any mistakes, so I'm going to go forward. So that's 10 times cosine of pi over 2. Cosine of 90 degrees is going left and right, nothing. So that's 0. Plus sine, so that's I times sine of pi over 2, which would be 1. So 1i. Okay, so 10 times 0 is still 0, so that's 0 plus 10 times 1i would be 10i. And there you go. There's your answer. All right, so quotient. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to follow this equation right here. 2 more examples. So it looks like the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the two radius. The first radius, which is 2 divided by 4, times cosine of the first angle, which is pi over 2, minus pi over 3. And then plus I times sine of the exact same two angles. Okay, so written like this. Now, 1/2 minus 1/3 is 1/6. So this is really 2/4 times cosine of 1/6. Cosine of pi over 6 is square root of 3 over 2. Cosine of pi over 6. Yeah, cosine of 30 degrees is square root of 3 over 2. Plus I times sine of pi over 6. Sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. So that's this. Okay, so now it's just a matter of simplifying. If I do this times this, the 2's are basically going to cancel each other out. It looks like I'm going to be left with square root of 3 over 4 plus multiply this times this. The 2's will cancel out, which looks like 1/4 I. If I'm not mistaken, I am going pretty quickly through this, so if I made a mistake, just let me know in the comments. Okay, the next one. So I've got 6 divided by square root of 2 times cosine of 7 pi. I did subtract. Yes, I did. 7 pi over 4 minus pi over 2. And I'm going to add that to I times sine of the exact same two angles, subtracted. All right. First of all, let's do the subtraction in the inside. So change this to 4, change this to a 2. 7 minus 2 is 5. So this is really just 5 pi over 4. So 5 pi over 4, remember, is in the third quadrant. All students take calculus. Only tangent is positive. So it looks like both of these are both going to be negative this time. And 45-degree angle is square root of 2 over 2 for both sine and cosine. All right, so we have 6 over square root of 2 times negative square root of 2 over 2 plus I times negative square root of 2 over 2, because both sine and cosine of 45 degrees is square root of 2 over 2. Okay, so when I multiply this times this, the square root of 2's are going to cancel, and I'm left with just negative 6 divided by 2, which is negative 3. Okay, that was nice and easy. And it looks like the same thing is going to happen here. Square root of 2 and square root of 2 cancel. I get negative 6 divided by 2, which is negative 3. And negative 3 times I is negative 3i. This actually becomes a really clean answer in the end. All right, I'm going to stop right there. Thanks again for watching. And it looks like I have one more video left for this topic. Have a great day.